Good morning. Today is Tuesday, April 1st, and it is a gorgeous and very rainy day. And that's not an April Fool's joke. It really is great. The meeting's called to order. First, I'll begin by introducing my colleagues. To my far left, Board Member Dee Dee Adamo. To her right, Vice Chair Fran Spivey Weber. To my right, Board Member Tam Dodak. And to her right, Board Member Stephen Moore. Mr. Howard, will you introduce the staff that's assisting you today?
Yes, thank you. Assisting the board today are Janine Townsend and Courtney Davis. To my right, Chief Deputies John Bishop and Karen Turgovich. To my left, Assistant Chief Counsel Phil Wiles. My understanding is that Michael will be joining us when the traffic abates.
Yeah, there was more, that's why I'm late too. There was more traffic than usual in addition to slowing down during the downpours. So, not surprising. Emergency evacuation, for those of you who don't know it, look and see where the nearest exits are to you. You'll hear a loud noise that'll sound like an emergency sound. It is. Take your stuff, and our meeting place is in Cesar Chavez Park across the street. If you go there, you'll find out when the all clear signs to come back. The meeting's being webcast and recorded, so there are two things you need to do. One of which, again, I'm not modeling very well. See, it's important to speak close to the microphone. That's important for the people behind you in the room. It's also important for the people on the webcast. So please try to do that. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's helpful. And the other thing is, please set all of your electronic devices on silent or turn them off, just as a courtesy to everyone else. All right, first we have the presentation of a Superior Accomplishment Award. Vicki.
So excuse me, good morning, Chair Marcus and members of the board. Usually when we give these awards, the recipient knows that they're getting it ahead of time. In this particular case, the recipient does not know she's getting this award. So Laurel Wardrop, come on up here.
Didn't think I was here.
Not a coincidence.
So as you all know, later this afternoon on our agenda, we'll be bringing, DWQ that is, we'll be bringing the Industrial General Stormwater Permit before the board for your consideration. This is another unusual thing. Usually we give the awards after you've taken an action, but we decided in this case it was so much effort that we were going to give it regardless of what you guys do. Because the purpose of the award is to recognize Laurel's effort in getting it to this point, and we have no control over whether you adopt it or not. And also to recognize all of the work that she put in managing this project. For those of you who don't know, the IGP is the Industrial General Stormwater Permit. It covers activities on days like this across the state and across a number of different kinds of industrial activities. Because there are so many industrial activities associated with this permit, it's very complicated, both because of the differences in the conditions that the permittees will operate under, and because there are tens of thousands of permittees that enroll under this particular permit. How many do you think, Laurel? 40,000?
Oh, and with the NEC, potentially 40.
Yeah, potentially 40,000 permittees. This project was designated as a high priority by the board when I was rotated into DWQ in October of 2010. I didn't even know what a stormwater permit was. Well, I did, but not very much about it. So all of the credit for this effort goes to Laurel and the other members of the team who are sitting in the room today. And I want to thank you, Laurel. Usually, the last time we gave this award, we gave it to one of our more experienced staff. It's very nice to give it to one of our newer staff and see that we have people in the ranks who are expanding their capabilities and willing to take on difficult projects. So,
I've had good support.
you want to talk?
I'd like to thank the the State Water Board for their support and my team. That I couldn't have done all this alone. I mean, it's taken people many years to get to where we are. I'm just a small piece of that. So, thanks.
So this is one of those nice awards that comes with money. So hopefully you'll put it to good use. And congratulations, Laurel. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Vicki.
Greg, did you want to say anything? Nah.
Yeah, that's good. There we go. Spaces in there.
That was nice. Thanks. Next, what I forgot to say, just for people to have a sense of the pacing today, we will do a mid-morning break. It may be on the early side. We'll probably do it before we move on to the industrial general permit. I won't promise that, but I think that's probably what we'll do. And we will take a lunch break at some point, and it just depends on how many speaker cards we get, so it's hard to know how long that large item on today's agenda will take, so just so you have a little chance to plan. Next, public forum. This is where the board will hear from anybody who wishes to speak outside of things that are already on the agenda today. We have any cards? Okay, no cards. All right, now let's consider the minutes from the March 18th board meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
I have a quick correction
Okay.
on my report. I'd just like to insert that I attended a workshop, but it was a Central Coast Regional Water Board workshop. And with that addition, I would move adoption.
And I will second
All
with
right.
that addition.
Well done. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We got the minutes done. Next, board member reports. I don't remember which side I started on last time. So who wants to start? Oh, okay. Steve, you start.
Okay.
I didn't.
I'll make mine brief. Good morning, everyone. This past couple of weeks, I had a couple of events I attended and spoke at. Last Wednesday, I attended a joint meeting of the California State Association of Counties and the County Engineers Association of California. There is some overlap in membership of those two organizations. And I spoke about generally the regulatory programs with stormwater and wetlands and how it affects the counties, and really emphasizing the important role counties play in water resource protection and water management along with land use decisions. And then second, I was the lunch speaker at the Department of Water Resources Water Plan meeting. There was a joint meeting of the Tribal Advisory Committee and the Public Advisory Committee to the Water Plan update, the 2013 Water Plan update. And just spoke generally about our two agencies, the Department of Water Resources and here at the State Water Board, and our efforts to create better alignment and emphasizing elements of the Governor's California Water Action Plan. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Moore. Just a couple items. On Thursday of last week, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and I and some of the staff participated in a tour of some of the oil fields and well stimulation projects that are going on in urban LA. It was absolutely fascinating,
Wow.
educational, And I want to thank Clean Water Action and the other NGO groups as well, especially the community organizations and the community members who participated and walked us through some of the areas and discussed some of the issues associated with those activities. We have another tour plan for the Kern area, and I'm looking forward to seeing the difference between urban versus rural type of operations. And then a quick report from the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board staff training session on climate change that I mentioned last time. I did attend the morning session. It was unbelievably well attended by staff. The speakers were very, very wonderful speaker, both in terms of presentation as well as content. And at some point, I'd love to discuss with the vice chair the idea of perhaps inviting some of those speakers here to organize a mini half-day session for our own staff to talk about climate change, sea level rise. And I was really impressed by the staff who attended, participated, and discussed the issue. I didn't stay for the afternoon where they, actually got together to try to develop some kind of a document as how they would incorporate it into their activities. But the report from Max, who did stay, was that it, again, was a very robust discussion, which I hope will lead to some really great things.
That's great. We should be doing that. I know you guys have probably done it many times before, but for those of us that are newer, it'd be great to do, and for staff. Your turn.
I've already been reported on. The tour was the spectacular event of my last couple of weeks, and everything else was fairly humdrum.
Okay, so I'm going to just say within the 2-week period, not giving dates here, but attended a board meeting of the Partnership of the San Joaquin Valley. This was a full-day meeting where we focused entirely on the drought, and our piece was only a portion, focused on impact to the educational system, of course, the economy in the San Joaquin Valley, drinking water, housing, emergency services. So it was a very informative day, I think similar to some of the events that the task force has been working on, but this focused within the entire San Joaquin Valley. And we liked it so much, I'm on that board, we liked it so much that we decided after we received a presentation from Omar Carrillo with Community Water Center that we would dedicate an entire board meeting to drinking water issues at some point this year. I attended the forum in Tulare that was put on by the Friant Water District, Latino Water Coalition, and other ag groups to discuss drought impacts. And then also on drought, attended a meeting with the Almond Board. And I was a moderator at a forum put on by the West Hills College. And the focus of this forum was on every last drop. And so the panel that I moderated focused on ag efficiencies. And while I was down in that area, that forum was at Harris Ranch, I went on a tour that Gita had put together along with Region 5 of the Kettleman City Hazardous Waste Facility. So that could meet with those folks about expansion of their facility, and then afterwards met with a group representing disadvantaged communities in Kettleman City. So that was real eye-opening and real opportunities there for a proposal that is on the table right now to provide a surface water supply for Kettleman City, but some ongoing concerns in the disadvantaged community. So it was a good opportunity to meet with them. And then yesterday, I spoke before the North State Water Alliance, and this is a group that you all are probably familiar with, but I'm just getting to develop a relationship with the mountain counties, NACWA, Metro Chamber, so a real good mix of groups here from the North State, and they wanted to hear about drought, of course, and then also way off into the future. So I spoke about the Water Action Plan.
Busy. Busy all. Much appreciated. I'll just mention a couple things. We had a number of hearings at which I got to testify, one on groundwater in front of Senate Natural Resources, and then our Assembly Budget Committee meeting with Tom and staff on groundwater and drinking water primarily, and it went ahead and moved out of committee with a reservation for when trailer bill language comes back, so that was all good. And then mostly I've been doing various drought meetings in general, in addition to you all coming to the administration's groundwater workshop last week. I thought that was a very good showing, and it was nice to have us rotate through the chair on a workshop that was chaired by the governor's office, and I thought even advanced the ball further in terms of people from various water agencies talking about where we need to go as a state on groundwater. I thought that was really pretty impressive. The two conferences I spoke at most recently were the Water Education Foundation, where I spoke on groundwater and drought, along with a bunch of other people on panels. And I just will mention, largely for Fran's sake, but also I have it in my purse, I think. I'll have to pull it out. To touch on something I had said in an earlier one, there was an in memoriam award. The annual award at the Water Education Foundation is really quite a big one in the water world, and it went to Pankaj Parekh, who was at LADWP for many years in charge of water quality and just a stellar human in the water world. And so that was really a particularly nice thing to be able to be there for. And I also spoke at the Water Education for Latino Leaders Conference last Friday, which was very well attended, and largely Latino leaders in water district board membership and some local elected officials from city council. So that conference is just 2 years old and is getting bigger, and it was a fun presentation because I was supposed to talk about financing. So rather than talking about controversial issues, I got to talk about money we can give people and how to get it. So that was really fun. All right. Next on the calendar, we have uncontested items, numbers 3 through 5. Do those remain uncontested? Okay, we have a comment card on 5, so we will pull that one out. 5. So do I have a motion on 3 and 4?
So moved.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, those pass. And now item number 5. Bethany.
This up a bit. Good morning, Chair Marcus and board members. My name is Bethany Payne from the Office of Chief Counsel. For the board's consideration today
Oh, all in
is an order to review the Los Angeles Regional Water Board's adoption of order number R4-2012-0175 on your own motion. The Los Angeles Water Board adopted its order to regulate MS4 discharges within the coastal watersheds of Los Angeles County, with the exception of the city of Long Beach. The 40 petitioners listed in the proposed own motion order filed timely petitions with us seeking review of the MS4 order. We have consolidated those petitions for review, but need more time than our regulations allow to finalize for your consideration a draft order on the merits. As a result, we recommend that the board take this intermediate step to adopt the own motion order, which will give staff sufficient time to finalize the proposed draft order. We received 2 timely comment letters and 6 late comment letters that I will summarize for you briefly. The first timely letter was submitted jointly by the cities of Duarte and Huntington Park. The cities have 3 underlying objections to the proposed order, all of which relate to statute of limitations concerns, which I think we can address for them. First, because the state board has not acted on the petitions within its 270-day regulatory window, our petition regulations result in all the pending petition. Their concern is that the petition regulations will result in all the pending petitions being deemed denied. And second and third, related to that concern, their letter objects to the fact that the state board hasn't identified within the proposed own motion order what issues it will be addressing within the order on the merits. So any issues, their concern is that any issues petitioned but not addressed in a future order on the merits could be vulnerable to a statute of limitations argument if petitioners don't ask for judicial review within 30 days of their petitions being deemed dismissed under Water Code Section 13330. So we are sympathetic to their concerns about potentially losing their opportunity for judicial review, but would like to state clearly for the record that this board has never used the own motion process to prejudice petitioners' due process rights and doesn't intend to do so here. In that vein, we have two solutions that we are happy to work with petitioners on. They're welcome to contact me with a request. Email is fine, to put their petitions in abeyance, and we will agree to that request. Our regulations are quite clear that when a petition is in abeyance, the 270-day time limit does not apply, so the petitions will not be deemed dismissed and the statute of limitations will be tolled. Secondly, if petitioners do not want to put their petitions in abeyance, they can stipulate to giving us a 60-day time extension as provided for in our regulations. And during that 60-day window, I can prepare a negotiated tolling agreement for all petitioners to execute, and that would toll the statute of limitations for all arguments raised in their petitions. Thirdly, they have another option available directly to them that they don't need our cooperation for. Under Water Code Section 13330, petitioners have a 30-day window from the end of the 270-day period to seek judicial review and file for a protective writ of mandate. The writ proceedings would likely take so long that this board would have first adopted its own order on the merits before those writ proceedings would even proceed. But we're certainly happy to work with them if they want to avoid having to take that judicial step. The other timely letter we received was from CASQA, the California Stormwater Quality Association. They do not object to the own motion order, but request that the state board commit to an adoption schedule. Here too, we are sympathetic to the urgency expressed in CASQA's letter, but I want to assure the board that staff is working diligently on this issue. We received nearly 40 petitions that raised at least 55 issues and many more sub-issues for State Water Board attention. We've also held a public workshop to receive feedback on receiving water limitations issues raised in these petitions, and we are taking the time needed to address these issues thoroughly and thoughtfully while balancing this work with competing state board priorities. We therefore recommend against committing to an adoption schedule. Of the 6 late letters, 4 were from the cities of Gardena, West Covina, Compton, and Lawndale, and they were in support of the own motion order. The remaining 2 were jointly from the cities of Covina and Arcadia, and another joint letter from environmental petitioners, NRDC, LA Waterkeeper, and Heal the Bay. They opposed the own motion order on grounds similar to Duarte and Huntington Park, so we think that our solutions would also work for them. But I'm happy to answer any questions you or they may have as commenters. Thank you.
Have you discussed your proposed solution with these groups? Or?
No, we wanted to make sure we had direction from you, but as soon as we do get that direction, I can go right back upstairs and begin those communications.
All right, any other questions before we go to public comment? We have 4 cards. Okay, let's move right along. People are asking for anywhere between 2 to 5 to 10 minutes. I'd prefer 3 minutes if you can. 10 minutes is kind of a long time because we're not doing an appeal of the order. We're just talking about a procedural motion. I'll give you 5. Okay. 10 just seems extreme. Okay, first is Ray to hear.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. You lost some weight. You look pretty good.
Duly noted.
I'm just, greasing you up a little bit here. Several of my clients support the state board's proposal to issue an interim order, or the motion to I don't know if what you would call it, a motion to postpone the implementation of the MS4 permit. In any case, to that end, several cities have written letters, which I am introducing into the public record now. More cities would have weighed in had a lyric notice gone out informing them of Agenda 5 for the April 1st meeting. To make things simple, we submitted my city submitted 5 letters. The most representative is the City of Gardena. I'd like to quickly read it into the public record. The City of Gardena is pleased to comment on the State Water Resources Control Board's policy question. Should the State Water Board adopt a proposed order to review the MS4 order on its own motion? The city's answer is an unqualified yes. We appreciate the complexities of the issues raised in 37 administrative petitions against the order and the considerable challenge it poses to the State Water Resources Control Board. I'm sorry, State Water Resource, State Board. The Los Angeles Water Board's order is very lengthy. It has 18 attachments and is over 500 pages long. As Michael Loffer pointed out at the October public hearing on the receiving water limitation language issue, there are a number of issues that need to be sorted out in addition to the issue of the receiving water limitation policy. The city as a petitioner has raised a number of concerns regarding the order's failure to comply with federal regulations and precedential state board water quality orders. At the top of the list is the regional board's contention that the iterative process does not apply to the stormwater management program. The attached letter from the regional board to the city makes clear that the following, that if a permittee chooses the SWMP as a compliance option instead of the watershed management program option, and monitoring indicates exceedances of water quality standards at the outfall, the city will be out of compliance. However, this view is in direct conflict with the receiving water limitation language section of the permit, which instructs on complying with water quality standards for receiving waters. It says unequivocally that the iterative process applies to the SWMP, which is in keeping with the State Board Water Quality Order 99-05. The receiving water limitation language currently has no reference to a WIMP or to an EWIMP.
I need to ask a question. It sounds like he's making arguments with respect to the petition itself, which really is not before us today. Before us today is just a motion to take up the petition.
Yes,
That's correct.
but the issue for us is that if an interim order is not issued, we're going to be stuck with these EWIMP and WIMP compliance deadlines, which are coming up in June of this year. One of my clients has to spend...
So I'm sorry, you're arguing for an interim order in lieu of the own motion order?
Or as part of the motion order, you can include an interim order.
I don't believe that is before us
No,
today,
that's
even
not
if it
what's
is.
before us today, and I think what's trying to happen is shoehorning in Merritt's argument into what's really a procedural on motion order. I can't tell you today what the board may decide to take up and not. Certainly, I don't think you're in a position to tell us that. So any issues on the merits are not what's before the board today.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to just talk to Bethany after the session about what the procedural ways to raise those issues might be.
But is that a potential option for this board to pursue at some point?
The issues you're talking about are all issues that have been raised in the petition. What this interim own motion order allows us to do is to consider those issues, but we don't need another interim order in addition to this to take up those issues or not. And the board has discretion as to whether to take up those issues, and it will exercise that discretion in the final adopted order on the merits. So the procedural step that I think the chair is talking to you about today is about what your cities may want to do to avoid the statute of limitations concern that other cities raised in their issue letters, and I'm happy to talk with you about that subsequent to this item.
Obviously, we don't want the 270 days to lapse, in which case we would have to file a lawsuit. We want to avoid the cost of litigation.
Sure.
Right,
On the
and
other
so
hand-
there are two steps that we're happy to work with your clients on, either entering into a tolling agreement or putting their petitions into abeyance so that either way the statute of limitations cease running.
But if we put petitions in abeyance, we're still stuck with a deadline date for the permit. No?
No, because those orders are all, those issues are all on petition with, all up for petition with the state board.
Okay. Okay.
That's
got it.
helpful.
That's good news. Sorry for getting this messed up.
If I want to make, that is my understanding of what you're saying,
Okay.
but if,
Yeah, again, we just want to avoid having to pay money to comply with these EWIMs and and WIMPs right now, which are coming up in June. So
Oh.
if we can avoid that, that's cool.
You're asking if you can avoid compliance with the order as it's currently written?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Where the compliance deadline dates on the permit, yes.
No, that's not what this order addresses. So you would need to continue complying until this board issues an order on the merits that addresses those issues.
Is there any timeline as to when that's going to happen?
That is something that the California Stormwater Quality Association asked for, was for this board to commit to a time schedule, and staff is recommending against that.
Okay. We were under the impression that you were going to opt for an interim order to put the current order on hold so we'd have time to deal with this, to resolve these very thorny issues.
That's not what this order proposes.
Yeah, there's a formal stay process if you want to stay something pending, but it's got very strict limitations. And
Yeah, and the board members may recall there actually was a request
Yeah.
for stay that had been denied last June, I believe, or May.
okay.
The other thing I would just want to clarify, just to kind of supplement, because some of the confusion in the discussion right now, if the petitioners were to put their petitions in abeyance, that's not going to alter what the staff is doing to prepare an order for this board, not only the timeliness, but also the issues. Just because a petition goes in abeyance, that's not going to change the calculus of whatever issues would be addressed in an ultimate order by the State Water Resources Control Board. Just wanted to clarify that
Right.
issue, 'cause it's one potential gap.
It's just a time frame issue. Right. Okay. Mr. I still suggest you have a conversation with Ms. Payne afterwards just to understand the procedural stuff. Understandable question.
All right. But you understand the dilemma for our cities.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Daniel Cooper for a variety of groups, LA Waterkeeper, NRDC, and Heal the Bay. That's very efficient, Daniel.
We aim to please. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Daniel Cooper, on behalf of NRDC, Heal the Bay, and Santa Monica Baykeeper.
Could you get closer to the microphone?
And we have a few concerns. One would be, and I think Mr. Tahir raised it, that there was no notice given to the petitioners. I think this just showed up on a regular agenda item. We went back and looked through our emails. We all asked ourselves, wait a minute, did we know about this request until it was agendized? No, we didn't. We could have had a conversation with Bethany about, abeyance or the 60-day continuance and so on before we got here and kind of worked that all out. Now we've got a week, I think, until the 270 days is up, and we've got to try and cut a deal. So we just think that process was unfortunate, and hopefully in the future we can communicate better. Certainly we were here at the receiving water limitation hearing. We're all engaged. So just a suggestion. Our concern about the own motion business is, in effect, and I realize you probably do this in other instances, although we went back and looked in our files and we didn't see one, but it certainly sounded like it in what we saw. In effect, at the 270th day, the board decides that it's disposing of the matter by addressing it by this motion, by its own motion, and the 270-day deadline disappears, and there's no end game in sight to actually resolve the petition. So the 270-day deadline becomes meaningless based on the board's own determination that it's disposed of the matter. So that's kind of problematic from our viewpoint. It makes the 270-day deadline meaningless. So we're certainly open to the 60-day continuance. We're certainly open to an abeyance. Our one concern is that everyone joins the abeyance so we don't have serial lawsuits or petitions happening, and it's a coordinated litigation that's going on. But that's just about this process. The own motion process raises very serious concerns for us about rendering the deadline meaningless. So we look forward to working with you on the abeyance or the continuance to work this out. Thanks.
Let me apologize too to Mr. Cooper. I was under the impression the LIRIS notice did go out, so I'll double check as well. But it certainly was not an intention to obfuscate or create a rush where one needn't be. So I'm looking forward to working with you on it.
Thank you. We were surprised that we didn't see one. So, okay. Thank you.
There's no intention to put it off forever. It's just we've used it in highly complex situations where you have multiple petitions, multiple issues, and we want to get it right rather than rush it. So the intention is to move with all deliberate haste, but get it right. So Bethany, you'll be having lots of conversations after this hearing, which is good, all to the good. All right, next we have Jeff Brousseau from Casqua.
Good morning, Chair Marcus and board members. I'm Jeff Brousseau from the California Stormwater Quality Association. As has been referenced a couple times this morning already, I think basically we're certainly sympathetic to the complexity of the issues. The governor's declaration of the drought certainly threw everybody's schedules off this year. But it's a little bit hard for us to go from having at least some deadline as to when we might get some response on this to actually no deadline at all. It seems like it's kind of going in the wrong direction. You're probably aware that a number of regional water boards and permittees across the state are watching this very closely. I see emails and conversations almost weekly with people saying, well, what's the state board going to do? Well, we'll know by the end of early April. Now we'll say we're not quite sure when we're going to know. So it just seems from a certainty and from a management perspective, it would be nice to have some kind of a deadline. We're certainly open to being determined in a way where it's not hasty. There's plenty of margin for error, but it just seems like going from 270 to infinity is maybe a little bit too far. So we're open to some number, some date, but just would like to see something in there, that's all. So thank you.
Richard Montevideo for Duarte and Huntington Park.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Richard Montevideo on behalf of the cities of Duarte and Huntington Park. I have several concerns, and I do appreciate the proposal in terms of resolving these matters, and it looks like this matter will get resolved. But I think it's important to take a step back. Obviously, this board is well aware that these are critical issues to the municipalities up and down the state. I mean, the impacts of this board's decision, or potentially lack thereof, will be significant up and down the state on municipalities, NGOs, the public in general. One of the concerns is that these petitions have been pending for some time. We didn't get even an inkling that this was coming until we got the general public notice. I mean, these are huge issues. I would ask that in the future, if we're coming up to this kind of a deadline, particularly given the procedure that you're following, which I think is, I'll get into very shortly, is extremely problematic, we would request that there be some communication with the petitioners in advance if some time would permit. On the merits, what we have at this point in time is we have a series of petitions, 40 petitions, that are doing what? They are challenging an action of the LA Regional Board. We have filed petitions with a huge set of issues, including not just the RWL issues, but TMDLs, discharge prohibitions, are the monitoring requirements appropriate? Did the regional board have authority to impose the LID requirements, the hydro modification requirements? There are issues, procedural issues in terms of whether the same council, if you will, can represent both the board and the staff. There's a whole host of other issues as well. Issues that my clients have raised and other petitioners have raised, both on the city end as well as on the NGO end. We are challenging a decision by the LA board. Your staff started off this discussion by saying, you need more time than the regulations allow. You can't give yourself more time without changing the regulations than the regulations allow. The proposed order that you have submitted is a proposed order for you to take up these petitions on your own motion. Actually, it's not to take up the petitions. It's theoretically to look at some, frankly, unidentified issues involving the LA permit. Once the 270 days expires, assuming there's no 60-day extension, and we've actually offered that in our letter, we would agree to the 60-day extension. We think that makes a lot of sense. But let's assume that doesn't happen. And the deadline, by the way, is April 4. So that's 3 days from now. And whether or not it's April 3 at midnight or April 4 at midnight, I'm not really sure, but I'd rather not go there. I mean, but once midnight strikes, my belief is that this board doesn't have jurisdiction because we've appealed a decision to this body of an order made by the LA board. You have 270 days, maybe plus 60, to look at that. If you don't look at that, we then have to go to court. We don't want to do that at this point. We want to have this board review it. My point is that taking it up on your own motion, what does that do for us? We don't know what the issues are. You can decide what issues you want to take up or not take up. But at that point, our challenge is not what the LA board did, because that petition is done. And we would then have to move forward because you no longer have jurisdiction. Our challenge would be to what this board is doing in its order, but I would submit that you don't even have jurisdiction to take it up. If the purpose of your own motion review is to simply buy time because the regulations don't allow you the time, in effect, if we're in court arguing over this issue, my point would be they don't even have jurisdiction to deal with it, because I need to have the ability to challenge, to raise all the issues I've raised before this board that were then deemed denied. So I really do understand what the purpose of this was. But talk to the petitioners in advance. I mean, we are very sensitive to what's happening to our issues. And B, procedurally, I mean, there are real issues here. And then jurisdictional-wise, that's a huge issue. If we have to go into court on this, which I'm hoping we're not going to, our arguments would be the LA board messed up, and if this board then subsequently makes a determination, in addition to quibbling with, if we don't like parts of your determination, the substance of it, we will also say that jurisdictionally you didn't have the ability to move to do what you did, because in effect you're trying to provide yourself more time than the regulations allow. In terms of the resolution, yes, in terms of the resolution, if the reference to a tolling was to extend per the 2050.5B, that would be, I think, our preference. But it's not really a tolling agreement. It's agreement to extend by 60 days. We've offered that already. We would welcome that, but we have to do it. I would say we need to do it within 2 days. The problem with the abeyance, and I think you could potentially do both, the problem with the abeyance is that if you hold it in abeyance and it's pulled out and then you act, I'm only then going to have 2 or 3 days after your action to get a petition on file. Because in effect, what you're doing is you're tolling. I will then have the remainder of the 270, if you follow me.
Yeah,
I'm not
here's my suggestion. My suggestion is that you meet with Ms. Payne afterwards to talk it through. Obviously, our council has a different view of what our ability is, and we've done this before. So for us, this is not as unusual as it may seem to you, and it's a prudent way to be able to actually do a good job on what we're doing, which is actually in your client's interest. But I understand your concerns, and I'll just suggest you have this conversation with our council, and they'll talk to us. But I don't think an answer is to just say no today, because we're not going to, you don't want that either. So.
Just address a few items for the record and for the benefit of people listening in on the webcast who wouldn't listen to our conversation subsequent.
Go ahead.
First, let me fall on my sword. I certainly was under the impression that a LIRA's notice had gone out, and since it didn't, I apologize for that.
But it's not just the LIRA's notice. It's also, prior to the LIRA's notice, it would have been nice to have had some dialogue on the petitions, so we could maybe have just entered into the STIP in the first, or extended the time by 60 days in the first instance.
Sure, so let me fall on my sword for that.
This is going to be a very bloody moment, I'm thinking.
And to discuss your procedural issues, just for the record for folks listening in, we do have not only regulatory but statutory authority to take items up on our own motion. The statutory authority is in section 13.320 of the Water Code, and the regulatory authority is in Title 23, section 2050.5. So we do have statutory authority and regulatory authority to take it up on our own motion. We are sympathetic to his his client's statute of limitations concerns, and believe that either the abeyance or it wouldn't be a 60-day tolling. We would use that 60 days to negotiate a tolling agreement that would extend the statute of limitations or toll the statute of limitations longer for his client's benefit. But he always does have 30 days from within the petition. His client's petitions are deemed dismissed to file for a writ. And that would protect his client's interests as well if he feels that either the abeyance or tolling arrangements aren't of use for his clients. I certainly can't give him or his clients advice, but there are 3 options available, and I'm certainly happy to discuss those with you after, but I wanted to get that on the record that we do have statutory and regulatory authority to do this order today.
Can I just briefly address that?
Very briefly.
It's not a tolling. If you enter into a tolling, once the 270 days expires, I understand there's a difference of opinion here, but if you assume that I'm correct, that it's a jurisdictional issue, just for the sake of discussion, you can't then toll the time to have this board hear it. 2050.5B allows us to agree with you to give it 60 additional days. That's not tolling. That's extending the 270-day period. That's what we would propose, because it avoids all these other issues.
I think he's right. We do have some areas of disagreement, but I think the one area where we do agree is that the writ option is available to your clients.
I understand the writ option is available, but what I'm asking is I'd asked the board to look at giving the petitioners the 60 days provided by the regulations, as opposed to entering into some tolling agreement to file a lawsuit or what have you. I think that's the better approach.
I understand your concerns. You obviously always have to think worst case for your client. I suggest you talk with her afterwards, and maybe she can give you comfort, since we've worked on these a lot more. And now I want to ask a few other questions, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bethany, I know that you don't want to put a set time on how long it will be, but can you give us some ballpark estimate of how much time you think it will take your staff to do this, so that we're not feeling that it's open-ended, even if we don't set it in stone? I mean, what kind of time are you thinking you need? And I think that I can't speak for my board members ever, but, you know, obviously all deliberate haste, but
Sure. It's difficult for me to speak because I have others technical staff helping me on this order, and they, as well as I, have competing board priorities, so it's difficult for me to commit on their behalves. But I would expect that no other intervening issues such as drought coming in and bumping priorities, we could be done and have a draft order for your consideration by the end of summer, early fall. And then assuming, you know, edits and stuff, after that, notice it for a public workshop after that. I just hesitate to committing to that because, as you see from the commenters today, if that slips, then that can generate more angst than we necessarily want to stir up. If that's unnecessary, we'd rather not do that.
all right. Well, there's angst for not knowing
From
too.
not
So I
knowing
think
as well,
one of
and
the
I'm
things
certainly sympathetic to that. That's
I'll
why I was-
suggest is sort of regular updates to the board members
and
about
we're
where
happy
we
to
are.
do that.
Other questions from my colleagues? Sorry to take first shot there.
Actually, you asked the question that I was going to ask, and I might suggest, I like your projections, Ms. Payne. Perhaps in the executive officer's report, we can get sort of obviously not a discussion of the substantive items being evaluated for the petition, but just a regular update in terms of the progress and whether or not staff feels that it's still going to be able to reach the projection that Ms. Payne just gave. And that way, the petitioners and other interested parties could see from your executive director's report, Mr. Howard, how progress is going.
We'll provide a monthly
Good.
update.
That's a good idea. Good. Other questions, comments? All right. Do I have a motion?
I will so move this item.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, so moved. Thanks for the conversation. I think it was necessary, and thanks for falling on your sword on that. And obviously, the more communication, the better. Twice she did, I know, and she's such a nice person. So, All right, we're now going to take a 15-minute break before we go on. Oh, no, we have drought. Let's do drought, and then we'll do a 15-minute break. Hi.
Hi. So I'll get us started. I'm Amanda Montgomery, the program manager. Let's check. Okay, I'll lean closer to it. So I'm the program manager for water rights permitting and licensing. And I'll start us off today, and then I'll transition to John O'Hagan, who's the program manager for water rights enforcement. Since I last updated you on urgency changes and transfers on March 18th, there's been a number of new items received and items acted upon. So I'm going to give an update in 3 topic areas. The first one is I'll discuss urgency changes, and that's where a water right holder requests to change their existing water right. During the drought, we're usually seeing changes that allow the party to divert more water, such as relaxing their fisheries bypass term. Second, I'll discuss water transfers, which is where a water right holder transfers water to another party. And third, I'll give a brief update on how we've been helping a community that's at risk of running out of their drinking water supply. Okay, so first
You want to start with the fact that it's raining again? I
Sure,
just want to say
wonderful.
that sort of every few items, just
Yes.
because it's so nice.
It's a great
We might
thing.
have to take a break for everybody to go run in the rain and celebrate every drop and say thank you to the skies.
So first I'll discuss urgency changes. Rancho Murrieta had submitted a request back in mid-February to relax their fisheries bypass term. So last Thursday, they actually withdrew their petition. They no longer need bypass relaxation since their reservoirs are both full. So that is a great result of the rain. As far as new urgency changes requested, we received a petition from Merced Irrigation District on March 20th. And that petition is both an urgency change request and a temporary transfer request. The request asks to reduce the reservoir minimum pool. Basically, they want to keep a certain amount of, what a minimum pool is keeping a certain amount of water in the reservoir. They want to keep less water in their reservoir. If the change is allowed, it would make more stored water